It's Tuesday, September 22nd, 2025. I'm Tom LoBianco. Welcome to the show. On today's show, we've got Latino voting expert Mike Madrid, who's going to be joining us, telling us about whether there has been indeed a seismic shift in sentiments, what that might mean at the ballot box. Later, we'll have 24 Sight's own Julie Grace Brufke joining us to talk about the shutdown and what that might mean for us. Before we hit our headlines at the top here, a reminder, you find us here every day noon on Substack Live, or you can catch us at 8 p.m. on Political Voices Network over on YouTube. And a big shout out to the entire Walters family, expanded by one yesterday. There's a new Walters in the world. We'll have more on that when Ian returns. He's out now being an excellent father, even better father. Karen, always an excellent mother. So Ian helping to live up to that standard. Love you guys. Before we hit our headlines, a point of personal privilege here, a point of wisdom, if you will, before we get to our top headline. A lot of people have been rejoicing in Jimmy Kimmel returning tonight. That from Disney announcing yesterday that they would end their suspension, this after a historic back and forth over our free speech in America. I want to note something that one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project, Trygve Olsen, and a veteran of overseas democratic fights against autocrats and neo-autocrats, routinely talks about in his 7 lessons for how to deal with autocrats. These things take time. They don't happen overnight. All right. If you think about this is just one skirmish, and it took a massive, massive hit to the Disney stock in order for Disney to reverse course, it seems. Let's take a look at the top of Drudge. Kimmel's back on ABC. But latest news out from New York Times is a good number of Americans might not see that. Conservative networks, mega TV station owners, Sinclair and Nexstar have said that they will not be airing Jimmy Kimmel tonight. They'll be preempting it with other programming. Sinclair News, I believe with Nexstar, Celebrity Family Feud, a replay of that. This is important because it's an ongoing battle. Things are rarely settled, certainly not in this moment in American history. Up in New York, on the East Coast, the world is here and focused on Russia. Latest from Guardian out of Britain, Polish leaders warned Russia that if they try again to invade NATO airspace with fighter jets, they'll be shot down. Don't cry if it happens. Here's the Guardian. UK and Poland vow to confront Russian aircraft violating NATO airspace. Russia shrugs off criticism as Poland and Estonia speak about incursions at emergency meeting of UN Security Council. This is yesterday. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. Poland's Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski told an emergency meeting of the Security Council. His warning was echoed by Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who told reporters earlier, "I want to be very clear, we will make a decision to shoot down flying objects." On Friday, Estonia reported that 3 Russian MiG-31 jets had crossed into airspace for 12 minutes before being forced to withdraw, and it follows the entry of 20 Russian drones into Polish skies earlier this month, which NATO fighters shot down. And latest on the shutdown here, we'll have Julie Grace on the show in a little bit here joining us to talk about this. Looks like we could have government shutdown in 1 week. There's the back and forth right now between top House and Senate Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, and President Donald Trump over whether they will or will not meet to negotiate. A reminder, as Julie Grace has reported at 24 Site News, this made it the quote unquote the clean spending bill, a short-term funding bill, which would keep things open for a few months, made it out of the House successfully last week and is now in the Senate, where Democrats do have the ability to block it, which potentially would force a shutdown. And as we've noted here before, many of the Democratic base really, really, really want that. Before we get to, before we bring Mike in, I want to talk a little bit about Latino voter sentiments. Here's the latest over at the Bulwark from our friend Adrian Carrasquillo, longtime reporter on Latino voters, Latino trends, and sentiments. He notes that in focus groups recently, there's been an incredible turn away from Trump among voters who selected him last time. An incredible amount of anger. A lot of people who feel they were duped by him. Mike Madrid writes over at The Great Transformation, however, with an important bit of context on this. At The Great Transformation, you can find about The Great Transformation with Mike Madrid. He writes, what you didn't know about Latino entrepreneurship, which states are winning the war for Latino small businesses. Over the past 30 years, and Madrid writes, over the past 30 years, I've seen a multitude of different reports and studies released that examine Hispanic entrepreneurship and what can be divined from often explosive rates at which we open up new businesses. More often than not, these reports only tell part of the story. Along these lines, a new report from Wallet Hub was just released that examines which states are witnessing the greatest growth among Latino entrepreneurs. Wallet Hub report illuminates where Hispanic entrepreneurs are finding the most fertile ground for business success. The findings reveal surprising patterns that challenge conventional wisdom about where that economic opportunity thrives for America's fastest growing demographic group. And we'll find out in a little bit with Mike Madrid. Again, if you're just joining us, folks, here on Substack, not doing comments today. We will be getting back to those soon, live comments. If you're catching us at 8 p.m. on YouTube, on Political Voices Network, you can drop in your comments in there. And I do read those. I do get back to those. Big thanks to everybody for being here, joining us for this. As I've noted before, this is incredibly important what we're doing, building the world of independent journalism here, especially as corporate mega media mergers like Nexstar, like Tegna, like Sinclair, all can be put under the thumb of the Trump White House. So it is more important than ever. You can find us at 24site.news on Substack, on YouTube, on Blue Sky. You can even find us on X. This is true. You can find us on X. I don't populate X very often. However, I do occasionally get over there. All right, folks, I'm going to be bringing on here in 1 second. I'm going to be bringing on our friend Mike Madrid. Mike, if you don't know him, is a longtime Latino voting expert, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. Mike, how's it going, man?
Tom, so great to be with you. It's been a little while, but I always feel like I'm coming home when I jump on the show with you. So appreciate you having me.
Thank you, sir. I think back to when we talked last year, around this time, actually. Oh, man, if only this is, now I will note Mike is not paying me anything. Maybe good, because if you have not bought his book, The Latino Century, and if you're not reading his Substack, the Great Transformation, you're missing out. You would have seen this, and if you were not subscribed to 24 Site News and podcast already, you would have seen this coming a mile away. You would know about this already. You would know exactly where we are.
The toughest part about being right is it wasn't a prediction, it was a warning, right? Like, this is likely to happen if we don't make the adjustments. And unfortunately, it is where we are. So yeah, it's one of those times when you were right, but you didn't really want to be.
Yeah, man. It's consequential. I mean, think back to all of the key swing states, not least of which Pennsylvania, Rust Belt swing states, where, I think a lot of times folks will look to Texas, California, Florida, kind of traditional havens of Latino
Right.
voters, and think about this. But I mean, this is incredibly impactful. And, just tens of thousands of votes would have swung things.
Yeah, and we'll recall, going back to the November elections, Pennsylvania specifically, there was the comments at that weird kind of rally in Madison Square Garden about Puerto Rico being a floating island of garbage. And a lot of people might say, look, I'm still shocked by the fact that that all of the data keeps moving the way it's going, and there's this real tension inside of my head, because I'm trying to provide just facts and evidence, saying this is what's likely to happen, this is where the data is going. But my own instincts are saying people are going to respond to that. Like, they're not going to like that. And yet, this is exactly what happened. Latinos break in Pennsylvania decidedly away from the Harris Waltz campaign. Same thing in North Carolina. Same thing, well, everywhere. I mean, and nationwide. And so we've got to be mindful. We've got to go in with our eyes wide open that the way we feel about things, the way we're emotionally reacting to a lot of things, is not necessarily what the data is showing us. It's not what it's telling us. And I'm a big believer that demographic work and data work really does explain what's likely to happen and what did happen. And politics, it's a very emotionally exhausting, as we all know, game. But there are data points you can look at to find better reasoning. And if you follow the data, more often than not, you're going to be right.
Yeah, and it should be noted, you're an old ground operations guy, which, in the campaign world, this is fairly unique. I mean, you're like, one step removed from being a part of the 12 advance people that work in politics on either side of the aisle. Ground folks, so to say, are the ones who lead field operations, right? Door knocking, handing out flyers. I guess in this case, selfies, TikToks, whatnot out there. So you get a very tactile sense of what's happening, and what the big numbers people often will miss in this. They don't hear this stuff. You merge the numbers with the anecdotes.
That's exactly it. That's where it connects the actual data with just looking at spreadsheets and numbers, and seeing the anecdotal stuff on the ground through the feedback that you're getting. And that really, in many ways, you can just, I think, imagine as like a very large focus group, right? You're getting data back in real time. It's telling you if you're missing stuff in the data. And by missing stuff, what I mean is, are you even asking the right questions? And that's usually the challenge with data work is, are you looking at the right things? Are you asking the
Mm,
right questions? Are you understanding the scenario that's on the ground? Because I'll give you a perfect example. Like, when you poll voters, Latino voters specifically, by a large margin, they're saying the economy is the number one issue. But the economy can mean a lot of things. Here's a real specific example. Jobs are lowest on the minds of Latino voters right now.
really?
Affordability is the highest. And the
Wow.
reason is because everybody has a job. But it takes three jobs to support a family now. So it's not a concern about jobs, it's a concern about affordability. And if you're just asking the question on the economy, you're going to miss a whole heck of a lot of what is actually being said.
I, you know, and I fall into this trap too, because, the most jarring thing, I mean, pick any of a dozen most jarring things about this administration, and I'll give props to the heads of Axios, who did a very good roundup of just the stunning a number from tariffs, from eliminating agencies without congressional approval, from just completely circumventing judicial rulings. One of the most stunning things to me always was these ICE. It's not a disappearance. We're not Chile, but they come off as disappearances, right down to these extraordinary renditions. It seems down to El Salvador for months at a time. I mean, is that factoring in here? Is that because you're saying it's the economy? I mean, or is this part of it also?
Now, this is exactly the right question to ask, Tom. And this is where I think I get a lot of people kind of shaking their head saying that's not possible. That's not possible. In the same way, what I was writing in the book was people saying, well, that's not going to happen. So, look, is it having an effect? Yes, it is having an effect. Yes, it is having an impact. The overreach, as it's described accurately, is what's offending people. When they do see these TikTok videos and they do see mothers having children ripped from their arms, or old men being beaten into the ground, or people being thrown into vans by, masked, jackbooted thugs, yes, it is absolutely having an impact. But let me make this really clear. But for working class people, lower working class people, of which Latinos overwhelmingly make up that segment of the demographic, it is still going to be jobs that are going to drive the decision-making process. I'm sorry, the economy that's going to drive the decision-making process.
Interesting.
And that is, I think, the difference between Democrats and Republicans. Is Democrats believe that it's for good reason. I agree with them. It's so shocking to the conscience that this could possibly be happening. And the refrain I almost always hear is, well, didn't they know this? They voted for this. Good luck. You deserve it. You should be deported too. The vast majority, 80% plus of these Latinos are not suspects to this. They're not seeing this in their communities. Now, again, I'm not saying it's not having an impact. It is having an impact. But look at the data. When Donald Trump's numbers started to collapse, it was on his quote unquote liberation day, the day he announced his tariffs. This was fully 8 weeks before the ICE raids, 2 months prior to the ICE raids happening in Los Angeles. His numbers were already dropping precipitously for economic concerns. The ICE stuff, the raids cemented that, are likely cementing that concern, that drop in support, but it's not the cause of it. And it's still not, it's ranked 6 out of the top 10 issues in most of the polling. Immigration is. So we've got to be mindful that the data, the objective, clear data, is telling us something that is not necessarily intuitive to what we're seeing on the ground. And again, let me make this really clear. I'm not saying it's not having an impact. It is having an impact. But the way Democrats are going to get Latino voters back is they've already, the Trump administration has already made the case on the immigration stuff for overreaching. I'm not saying don't talk about it, but I'm saying if you're not also prioritizing and talking about an economic solution to what's going on, you're going to end up with a scenario that you're seeing in a lot of focus groups, which is a lot of these Latino Trump voters are saying they regret voting for him, but not a single one of them is saying, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, or I'm going to vote at all.
Oh,
Not
interesting.
one. We're seeing it unanimously as people are like, yeah, I regret voting for Trump. I wouldn't do it again. Well, would you vote for Kamala Harris? No, I just wouldn't vote, or I'd vote for a third party, but I'm not voting for
Oh,
either of them. And
interesting.
that's what's happening. So there's a real danger in thinking that, oh, see, they learned their lesson, which is offensive, but they learned their lesson and they're going to come back. That's not what we're seeing at this moment in time. That may change in the next year, but for right now, that's not what's happening.
It's the I could I could laugh at how ridiculous all of this is because of what a repeat it is of the magical thinking of certain consultants without
That's
naming
exactly.
any names.
Yeah. No, see, here's one of the problems in both parties is, consultants and staff and politicians, they make their name basically off of picking a lane that they're going to kind of dominate, right? And so if
Yeah.
that lane proves wrong, they're not going to just be like, oh well, I'll try something new, or maybe I'll learn and do better. No, they're going to double, triple, quadruple down and keep leveraging that because they've spent years and sometimes, a lot of money building up a social media following, getting that job, building a consulting practice with employees, making a lot of money. They're not going to walk away from that. They're going to keep doubling down on the stereotype.
Yeah, this is I don't mind naming names. I mean, the Republican version of this, a few years ago would have been Jeff Rowe and his Walmart operation. The Democratic version, of course, would be certain members of the Biden team and Obama
Yeah.
holdovers.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a cultural problem that organizations fall into. Because
hmm,
nobody wants to lose their status. They all want to be invited to the White House Christmas card party. They all want to, make sure that they're getting that contract. And so if you need to hire a Latino consultant, then you play to the stereotype of Latinos and say, well, we know what Latinos are. And when Latino voters aren't that, or never have been that, or are changing away from that, like, you don't just suddenly go, oh, never mind, Latinos want the same thing everybody else does. It's like, no, well, let's keep amplifying the exaggeration. And that explains so much of what happened to the Democrats between 2016 and 2024. I mean, the fact that they're losing not just the Latinos, but losing them to Donald Trump. They're not losing to any Republican. They're losing historic numbers to Donald Trump. That's not Donald Trump being the Pied Piper with some magical solution. That's a complete inept failure of the Latino Democratic consulting class.
there is no such thing as Latinx. There just isn't.
No, right. That's a
It's
perfect
completely
example.
fabricated.
Yeah. They just keep doubling down on stuff that keeps getting more and more ridiculous as a stereotype because they're trying to leverage status in the party, and they know that who's going to push back and say Latinos
Hmm.
don't like that in the Democratic Party? Nobody is.
Hmm.
So they keep doing it.
Well, let me ask you this, because our incredible, I mean, some people are beginning to call this a second civil war. This incredible hyper partisan rift within the country right now, spurred on by no less than the president himself going to a funeral for one of his top lieutenants and saying, "We're going to get you." All right, saying that he's embracing hate. All right, this
I
is,
hate my opponents. Yeah.
yeah, not the words of Jesus. I would,
No. Yeah.
whatever your
It's just
faith.
everyone's saying this is a big Christian revival. It's like Christ would weep at watching this and thinking this is what he taught. It's absurd.
Yeah, and not the words of Erica Kirk either, who said that
Correct.
she, right? I mean, that's important to note too. I think that there's a lot of that's a discussion for another show. The fractures among MAGA over responding to this, which are very very interesting. But I feel like a lot of this gets missed in this hyper divide that we have right now, where people are not talking to each other. And to me, it seems like, or it's beginning to resemble, the splits that we've long seen in a lot of South American countries over the past decades. Places like Brazil, Colombia, all right, you name it, all right, Peru. Like, are we getting to that point, or are we getting to the point of fascist versus socialist outright?
Yes, and I think both can be true. I think what's happening is the elites in both parties are becoming more radicalized.
Hmm.
And as that happens, you are starting to see a movement further and further and further away from any there is no reward for being rational in our political system right now. There is no incentive to reach across the aisle and govern, and certainly not to compromise on anything, not even like what we're having for lunch, in the bipartisan meeting. Like, if you say, well, yeah, I'll have the turkey sandwich too, while the Republicans are having the turkey sandwich, well, you must be a sellout. So when compromise is a vice, democracy dies, because democracy by
Mm.
definition by definition you don't get everything that you want. When you say that you can't allow the other side to have anything, then the system of compromise simply cannot work. And that's the system we've created, is a system of compromise so that 350, 380 million people can actually live together.
Sure.
Nobody gets everything that they want. The question about kind of what we're seeing typically in Latin America is a really fascinating one, because usually what you see develop there, they don't tend to be ideological parties. They tend to be sort of tribes based off of
Interesting.
power, and that is what we're seeing emanate on the right. There, when there's no, when the right is
Oh,
bereft of any ideology, so it becomes
yeah.
what I can get for supporting this person, and that will be very, I think, descriptive of what the Republican Party becomes in a post-Trump world, because they're not fighting over taxes or the size of government anymore. We haven't heard those debates in a decade. They're not fighting over, freer markets or
Yeah.
protectionism. This America First thing is whatever Trump basically says it is. And so everyone's demonstrating loyalty to Trump. And what you're going to see when Trump exits the stage is there's going to be people trying to, most people trying to say, I'm the next Trump. Other people are just going to be trying to accumulate power for the sake of power. It's a political party is not that. A political party, as we've known it in the American experiment, is a philosophy of
Yeah.
governance. And that philosophy has been totally vacated from the Republican Party. It's why the Republican Party is particularly dangerous at this moment, is because it has no guiding principles to which its members, abide by. It's all about power.
Yeah. Folks, if you're just joining us, Mike Madrid is here. He is the author of The Great Transformation on Substack. The Latino Century is his latest book, a longtime expert on Latino voting trends, sentiments. I would note, too. I think this is even more important. You can learn a little bit from just the data, but clearly, as demonstrated by the situation that we find ourselves in this country right now, not enough unless you actually have some real world experience. And I would remind folks, for if you don't know, Mike, you were the executive director of the California Republican Party. All right, so you
Yes,
know this stuff.
yeah, I was a political director of the Republican Party,
I'm sorry, the
and
political
I
director.
worked on with the new majority at the RNC. I've been I did a lot of George W. Bush's Latino outreach work. Yeah, I've got decades of experience in working with Republicans on the Latino side of things, so I certainly know that. But I do occupy, Tom, kind of a unique space. I run Democratic campaigns for governor. Ran Antonio
Mm.
Villaraigosa's campaign for governor in 2018. Obviously, a co-founder of the Lincoln Project. So I've done a lot of things across the aisle, and it's given me a really unique view of how Democrats do things, how Republicans do things, why they're doing it, what their approach is like. They are very, very different. And yeah, I've been studying the Latino electorate since the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s.
It's remarkable how I remember last time, or last two times ago we talked. You mentioned, I think this is really important for folks, that to understand this. Uh, uh, you talked about how for many Hispanics and Latinos, this is very similar to generations of Irish Americans and the potato famine. Could you what did you mean by that?
First, you have a remarkable memory to be able to, with everybody that you're interviewing every day, to be able to reel back and discern whether it was our first or second discussion. So I commend you for that. Whatever tricks you're using to keep your memory that sharp, I need to
It's
hone
a
up on.
it's a endless supply of seltzer.
Man, wow, that's the life hack there. Use that.
No,
Um,
I
So let me talk about assimilation generally and how it works, because it's
Hmm,
very applicable to this moment in time. Because Republicans will say, yeah, everybody's welcome here as long as you come legally and you just kind of become American, which means kind of drop your ethnicity at the door and adopt kind of our ways of living and our lifestyle. It's ironic because there's a lot of social observers, myself included, that would say there really is no common American culture. We don't have a common religion. We don't have, we've got a
yeah,
very brief and
yeah.
very dynamically changing history. 250 years is not that long to create a nation, when some of these cultures around the world have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and we've had different epochs, different eras. All of this to say is when we look at the great migratory waves that began around the early 1900s, where the Irish, the
Mm,
Italians, Greeks, Jews started to come in large numbers, they often came in very short spurts, usually 15 to 20-year cycles. And then what would happen is they would slowly start to assimilate into the broader culture. What's different with Latinos, Mexican Americans specifically, is that this last migratory wave, and this is really what we consider the third great migratory wave of
mm,
Latinos to the United States, it's largely been continuous since the late 1980s. So,
uh,
what you're seeing is a very slow assimilative effect, which bothers a lot of conservatives. But, and here's where it's interesting,
hmm,
what we are seeing now after 40 years of this migration, these migration levels, is the greatest way to discern political decision making between Latinos is generationally. And this is important. So the stereotype of the Latino voter is Spanish speaking, just came from Latin America, probably works in a labor job. That's who they are. These are the people that are getting rounded up right now and thrown in vans and cracked down on.
mm,
That was really that stereotype was really, I think, emblematic of Latinos in the 80s and the 90s. Now 80% of Latinos are US born, and increasingly third and now a discernible fourth generation voter. So all of the big growth with Latinos is not with the voters that we are watching dealing with being, cracked down on. Those are most of them. A lot of them are not voters because a lot of them are not citizens. There are citizens being detained, by the way, a lot of them.
yeah,
But my point is the focus of the media and conventional wisdom, popular culture, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party is not where 80% of the Latino vote is at, which is why they're missing the target so much.
yes.
Most Latinos, voters, most do not speak Spanish.
Hmm,
The overwhelming majority are English dominant. Overwhelming. And it's why you're seeing like Univision and Telemundo, their market shares are collapsing because there just are not that many immigrants coming in anymore. And those that are rapidly learning English and assimilating into the broader mainstream culture. So when I start to present data to people and saying, well, the economy is still more important than these ICE crackdowns, people are like, how can that be? Like we're seeing all of this stuff and everybody is suspect. And it's like, well, not really. Not at least not at this point. I'm not going to say it ain't going to get worse because it is. But what my point is, the 80% of Latinos are not saying, I'm worried about being, and 80 is an exaggeration, but let's say it's half.
yeah,
Half of Latinos are not saying I'm not worried about these crackdowns like at all because my people have been here for 200 years. So there's a real lack of understanding of who Latino voters are because we have a very strict, disciplined stereotype of who Latinos are that we're trying to force everything into when that small little box is getting smaller and it's not representative of who Latinos are by a wide measure.
yeah, man. It reminds me so much of our own failings in the media industry and the reporting business uh, over the years. Not entirely by our own fault. I mean, a lot of external
Yeah.
forces, but so many young journalists coming up having only worked and reported from the big cities, the coast. And not having worked the circuit like some of the old heads used to do, the way it used to be in the newspapers, and that's, I mean, a lot of that is unavoidable
Yeah.
because those newspapers don't exist anymore. Right, that
Right.
that career path doesn't exist. It was obliterated by any number of forces. But we've lost that tactile sense of understanding this to the point where maybe if you come up through I don't know, Oklahoma, then Dallas, then maybe Boston before you hit DC, you wouldn't quote that political consultant who throws around the term of Latin X because you would know
Right.
this, you know what here.
That's a great observation. And I think that the changing nature of the journalism profession is undoubtedly going to be reflected in the way that we view and understand ourselves. How can it not be? But I mean, that's such a great observation. The fact that you don't have those kind of old typical beat reporters on the street in the community getting, sniffing out news and having personal relationships with people on the ground does become over reliant on those same consultants who have a vested interest in perpetuating their perspective and their narrative of what is going on. And so that actually never occurred to me, but that goes a long way to explain a lot of the disconnect between what a lot of Latino leaders are saying, or how the community is going to react and how it actually is on election day.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the truly remarkable stories of the Trump era, because there's plenty of data, there's plenty of evidence, Tom, to suggest that not only is Donald Trump not the one bringing Latinos to the Republican Party, but he is in fact an obstacle to an even bigger rightward
Hmm.
shift. And
Hmm.
the evidence for that is pretty overwhelming. It's pretty simple. In all of his elections, he's run for president 3 times. Republicans down ticket have done better than him in Hispanic dense precincts, which again is a
Oh,
very quick, simple, easy, but significant sign that if he was the magnet bringing people over, why is everybody else doing better than he is?
oh, interesting.
So, yeah, so that's, the conventional wisdom, the quick hot takes are going to be like, oh, Trump, they're under the Trump spell. I'm not saying that some of them aren't. Of course they are.
Sure.
But what I'm also saying is I look for demographic explanations, for scientific explanations for why people are behaving the way they are. And to me, it's pretty clear. It's this changing coalitions of the working class moving towards the Republican Party broadly, regardless of race or ethnicity. But also, perhaps more importantly, the fact that 80% of new Latino voters, 30% of which are under the age of 30, by the way, a third of the Latino electorate is under 30. These are
Wow.
overwhelmingly US born, view themselves
Hmm.
as typically American, in the vast majority of cases don't speak Spanish, don't watch Telemundo, are going to the same they're watching Joe Rogan, they're doing what everybody else is at that same age demographic is. So I think when people look at enough data to understand why it's happening, it makes a little bit more rational sense rather than these people are all under some spell that Donald Trump has got them cast under.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, should I be moving up Marco Rubio in my 2028 rankings?
What the great irony is, I was a big Marco fan before this whole Trump era because he was 180 degrees different person. He
Uh,
was a much more opening, welcoming person. Now he's just kind of full blown MAGA, obviously.
yeah.
I would not count him out because he has been able to kind of straddle both worlds.
Hmm.
He has been able to get into the inner sanctum of Donald Trump's, MAGA, trust circle.
Yeah.
But he does have some crossover appeal. He absolutely does.
Oh, interesting. Before you hopped on here, I was reading from your latest post, and this gets to something I wanted to follow up on with you because you had a trip a few months ago to a Latino haven, so to say. This is the post at The Great Transformation with Mike Madrid on Substack. What you didn't know about Latino entrepreneurship, published a week or so ago. You talked about a Wallet Hub study, which examined states witnessing the greatest growth among entrepreneurs. Uh, I was shocked by this. Which state is it?
Overwhelmingly, the state that performs the best is Florida, followed by Texas.
Wow.
And California, which has the largest Latino population by a wide stretch, doesn't make the list until 25. And 25 is a city named Santa Clarita, which is a pretty Latino Republican city.
Interesting.
So, and it's very suburbanized. This is that
Ah,
demographic we're talking about. It's a very second, third, fourth generation Latino, higher college education rates, very business friendly environment. And so, even where you're seeing entrepreneurship in California, and again, how the largest Latino state in the union doesn't make the list until 25 is just an embarrassment. But when it
that's
does, it's
insane.
even then it's in more conservative areas. So Yeah, yeah. But
Well,
it
and
explains a
you
lot. Explains a lot about why we're seeing Latino voting behavior change in these areas.
okay? So, in politics, or professional politics, at least, is the intersection of understanding this and the ability to make a buck off of it.
Yeah.
And so, a couple months ago, you were down in Miami, where CPAC is expanding to make a buck off of it. Or so, are they doing it right?
No, this was beautiful. It was so bad. It was so bad. Like I was shocked at how bad because I mean sometimes look in politics there are some of these aha moments where you're like, oh my God, like CPAC has figured it out. Like they're going to do a big CPAC Latino, the first one. Of course, it's going to be in South Florida. Of course, it's going to be with the Cubans. But still, set that aside. At least they figured it out. So I get some plane tickets and I fly down, get some media credentials because I want to see this. Like, what is this going to be like? And what it ended up really being was it was a partnership with another existing like Latino Chamber of Commerce event.
Hmm.
And so you had a wealthier upwardly mobile business class Latino community, which you have in Florida, right? A lot of the very successful Cuban
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. And then you meshed it with sort of the kitschy, you know, um, red, white, and blue, Uncle Sam, grassroots, crazy folks from CPAC. And it was just a spectacular crash of cultures that had no business being in the same room together. Tom, it was awkward. It was painfully awkward. Going like, man, you had a great idea, but none of you thought about it beyond how great of an idea it was. And sometimes a great idea can turn out really, really badly in reality. And that's exactly what CPAC Latino was. It was so, so bad. I can't explain it to you because everybody up on stage is trying to the pyrotechnic fireworks and trying to talk about how much they hate the Democrats and like anti-trans stuff, and these business leaders are like, what the hell am I wasting my time? What is this? Is this like a circus? And yeah, just really, really, really bad. Really, really missed the mark.
like like okay, timeshares, crypto,
Yeah.
Herbalife.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well put. That's what it was. Add some fireworks in there, some dancing Uncle Sam figures, some golden Donald Trump calves, and it's like all of these business owners are like, they're not grassrootsy right-wing MAGA people. These are people that are worried about the business climate, like talking about your policies on international trade. We want to hear about like this tariff rationale, like what's going on? Why are you doing this? And what
Oh,
they were
interesting.
getting was they were getting the crazy, the CPAC nuts. And it was just it could not have been. It was like having a meat convention next to the vegetarian convention, and then deciding, hey, let's all get in the same room and have a conversation. It was really bad.
It seems like maybe they didn't read the Latino Century.
That's well, see, that's what I'm saying. Is as critical as I am of the Democrats, I'm far more critical of the Republicans. And so I think a lot of people hear me and go, "Oh, he's just bringing bad news." It's like, no, I'm not. The Republicans have not figured this out. Let me make that really clear. And in fact, the CPAC example really brought it home, even to me, who's known this for 30 years, how far off the mark they are and how little they really
Hmm.
care to understand it. They're trying to take advantage of something demographically that's happening, and they can't even take a win correctly. So if I am leaving some of those Democrats out there like deflated or angry,
Wow.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying these guys, the Republicans, do not get it. They're winning these voters despite their best efforts, not because of them. There's no data, Tom. There is no polling data or very, very little showing that Latinos are changing their political beliefs and realigning to the Republican Party. There are some slight registration movements that is happening, but very slight. So I don't want to say there's none, but overwhelmingly, what we're really watching is what we call a de-alignment, not a realignment. And that
Hmm.
de-alignment means they're moving away from the Democratic Party. They're moving away from both parties. It's just the Democrats started in such a strong position that they're seeing the effects more. And so, look, Latinos we're the only group in America that's 50-50 vote. Everybody else
Hmm.
is pretty much hyper, split and polarized.
Yeah.
Latinos are 50-50. and that's happening for a reason, but it's literally because half of Latinos hate Republicans, the other half are done with the Democrats. That's all it is. That's all. So it's all completely fixable. Like I said, there's no Pied Piper here. There's no magic bullet. It takes honest hard work based off of good, clear, clean, sober-eyed data, and whichever party does it best is going to be the party that dominates politics for the next generation.
Yeah, there is no deep state. Everything is an episode of Veep. It just is. Go
Well said.
splurge on ad-free HBO. All right, great. It's worth it. Dude, Mike, thank you. Always, man. This is incredible.
Love being with you, Tom. Thanks for. I'm sure you'll remember this one too. I'll come back on and be just as shocked that you remember which Mike Madrid episode you're talking about. So I'm gonna go get some seltzer, man. It was great talking to you. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Awesome. See you, Mike.
See ya.
Hey, Julie Grace. What is up?
How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Hey guys, that was Mike Madrid. Go find his work over at the Great Transformation Project, the Latino Century. If you're here and you've been here before, you probably know who this is. It's Julie Grace. What's up?
What's going on? So, White House meeting with Dem leaders canceled. So, got a few more days to avert a shutdown there, and things are looking pretty grim right now. So, it's kind of
get in your national park fund while you can. Is that
I mean, odds they cave. I feel like Dems often do, and they probably have more leverage in November if I've talked to some people that have kind of taken that position of they might be able to leverage more if they just pass the CR this time around. But I mean, they're pretty dug in on the health stuff, and you figure insurers are going to start to put out those premium numbers for the following year. So that's kind of a factor where they might lose some leverage.
We were talking yesterday, and you told me something really interesting, which seems to factor into this. I laughed. This is incredible of the politics of this. The House just shipped them the funding bill, and it's like, all right, we're leaving. We're going for 2 weeks. That is hilarious.
They did. Mike Johnson said today he's got no plans of coming and bringing everybody back. So Dems have a meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday where they're trying to plot out strategy over on the House side. But yeah, they passed it and they were like, we're out. They were trying to jam the Senate. Doesn't look like the Senate's taking it. So I think the odds, I initially would have said the odds of a shutdown were low. And I feel like that's kind of dramatically shifted the past 24 hours.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so what's happening here? I mean, is there, number one, would a meeting, in your sense, would a meeting between Schumer and Jeffries and Trump even change anything?
I mean, Spiro, probably not. I mean, I think maybe he could have thrown them something that could have gotten them over the finish line to get their members to rally around it while they kind of tried to figure out a longer term plan, which even if they do pass this, they're going to have to hash something out on a larger scale in November. But I mean, I talked to a Dem operative earlier that I was texting with. Me look up. They were saying that they feel like it kind of shows Trump canceling this. They feel like it's weakness on their end, and like polling numbers, and he are looking bad for Republicans internally. Was what we're speculating on, and they kind of made the point that usually Trump kind of likes to sit down and relishes in kind of hashing it out with the opposition, and trying to strong arm things. So they found that position interesting. Yeah, I feel like Republicans would take a very different position on that and say that he just feels like it's not worth his time, and are hoping Republicans just kind of strong arm things through there. But I mean, I don't think that, I mean, right now, the odds of that House bill getting through the Senate, I feel like are low.
Well, we'll go to the pocketbook question here. Of course, do you think either way, right? If there is a shutdown or some kind of spending bill is ultimately passed by the Senate, agreed to by the House, signed by Trump, what would happen with the healthcare costs? Do you think they're going to these subsidies, the tax credits are going to end? Do you think they'll keep them in place?
I mean, technically, they have until the end of the year to address it, so they've got a little time to hash that out. But I mean, insurance companies are kind of trying to figure out premiums for the next year, which is a factor which does kind of put them a little bit more on a time crunch. I mean, there are, in theory, other vehicles that they could tack that onto, but I mean, Republicans are pretty split on. I mean, there's definitely some moderates that would like to see some of those subsidies that are extended there, but it's a big split within the party, and kind of not something I see Republican leaders kind of leaning into on bringing to the floor.
I mean, that was remarkable the way that, I mean, what seemed like the relative speed with which Mike Johnson moved on the initial volley, sending it to the Senate like that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there were some questions over whether it was going to pass initially, just even with Republican support. So it's, I mean, their whole big plan was, all right, they've got until September 30th, and they're going to have to take this. But I mean, both sides are really digging in. You're already kind of seeing the partisan finger pointing on social media and comments in the hallway on who would go into shutdown. And I mean, ultimately, shutdowns are expensive. It upsets government workers. It poses a lot of problems where sometimes it's more costly than people think the government shuts down and there are costs associated with that it would be a money saver, but no, it's technically sometimes costs millions and millions of dollars a day. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how the messaging war is there, as it kind of plays out there, since I mean, it is a relatively clean CR where it would keep funding kind of at the same spot until mid-November. So I feel like Republicans are like, we're not tacking extra riders on there, and Democrats shouldn't be complaining because we don't have what they call poison pills that would push them against ultimately voting for something. So that's kind of their argument at the moment. So it's kind of a weird game of chicken that they're playing right now.
Yet another game of chicken at the Capitol.
Game of chicken up on Capitol Hill this year.
How do you do it? This I ask you this question offline all the time. I'd ask you the question online here. How do you do this every day, Julie Grace? I just am stunned by this.
But yeah, I mean, the 6 p.m. meeting next week will be interesting. And I mean, my guess is I've got to check in with Republicans, and my guess is they'll probably have some type of call on this, but it seems like they're very dug into their position. So, I mean, we could see a shutdown. It's been a while since there's been a shutdown. So we'll see.
Just astounding. Really. Who wins or loses in this, right? If there is a shutdown, that's the question I get a lot from my neighbors, from friends who don't do this. Who would take the blame? What's your sense?
I mean, right now you're kind of seeing everyone blame each other. In the past, I feel like Republicans have kind of taken the brunt of the blame when there have been shutdowns and over kind of trying to leverage things. But right now, I mean, it is a relatively clean CR, so I'm not sure if Dems take heat over that. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting how it plays out. I mean, right now there are a couple things. There's like a DC budget fix they tacked on there, but outside of that, and there's additional security funding for lawmakers after the Charlie Kirk that they had put in there. But outside of that, it kind of just keeps levels the same. So
read about it at 24 Site News, folks. Always sign up 24 Site News. Julie Grace delivers this constantly. You'll probably recall her One Big Beautiful Bill, We Don't Sleep coverage, which I would note was incredibly cogent and it just very tightly crafted for being somebody working on 2 or 3 hours of sleep every day.
A lot of Celsius.
I know, right? It is the Hills crack cocaine. It really is. It's legal.
It's better than Red Bull.
What did people do before those vending machines were in there, right? I mean, like, I feel like those have only been around in the last 10 years. Like, it used to be crap.
How long they've been up there? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I guess there were other energy drinks. I guess there was like the Monster energy drinks back in the day. I remember covering like healthcare during like 2016 and drinking like really awful energy drinks.
See, this is
much in case any of them ever decide to sponsor the website, but
this is why we do this. All right, we mainline B vitamins and all kinds of terrible, highly processed crap. You're presenting itself as nutrients, in what 24-ounce cans. All right, so
a lot of meals over the years.
I know. It seems that we're tireless. I'll just say that. It looks that way. Julie Grace, thank you so much. Always.
All right, talk to you soon.
See you. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Tomorrow on the program, big thanks, Julie Grace, always. I'll tell you, uh, I know how I do it. I still don't entirely know how she does it. She has the energy of 10 veteran congressional correspondents. Thank God for it. It is remarkable. Um, Coming up on the show tomorrow, we're going to have Thom Hartmann, a veteran progressive broadcaster, bringing us up to speed on what he's seeing. What are we witnessing in this country? That's kind of the question. I always try to answer here. Right? I try to bring on different voices here. What are we seeing? What is this? All right, to help ground all of us so that we understand this. So that'll be a lot of fun. Later this week, we're going to have on author Alexandra Hudson, author of The Soul of Civility, a very good book. You should go check that out. She has some very interesting findings on what is the difference between politeness and civility. Very important for this moment. Before I head out, I want to say a big thanks to all of you for being here, guys. Thank you so much for supporting us. Thank you so much for supporting independent journalism now more than ever. Look, as I mentioned at the top of the show, ABC, Disney may have listened to the populace, may have listened to the stock market, may have listened to the serious economic pressure put on them. But Sinclair, conservative broadcaster, conservative mega broadcaster, and Nexstar, who is trying to become the biggest owner of local TV stations in the United States, both countered by saying, no, we're going to keep on canceling Jimmy Kimmel. All right. So the importance of independent journalism never ends, guys. All right. And thank you for being here. And I want to say a big thanks to all of our sponsors for this. Beth Solomon, thank you. The author of From Fire to Fabulous. Folks, if you've been doged, as they say around here in the DMV, you lost your job because Elon Musk eliminated it. Check out Beth Solomon. Her book From Fire to Fabulous details her work and her career from the C-suite to getting fired and picking yourself back up. She is a career coach. She's done this before. She has some really good advice there. Also, want to mention my friend Manoj here. Check out projectmanagemymove.com. All right. So Manoj runs this, and I will tell you that I did not know about this before talking with Manoj here. So there are these things called, if you're in the real estate industry, you know this already. There's these things called distress sales, and so if something terrible happens, there's a death in the family, a divorce, there's a sudden reason that you need to move. You put your house up on the market. If it's listed immediately, you might be losing out on potentially tens of thousands of dollars in value. So what Manoj does is he acts as the logistics guy. All right. He actually will go out and coordinate even just the simplest thing like bringing in somebody, painter, or do some basic touch-up work inside the house. That will improve the home value, get you all the money that you should get. All right. So you can deal with, there's a lot going on with that. So you can deal with everything going on in your family life. All right. Check out projectmanagemymove.com. And a big thanks, Beth Emanuj, for supporting our work of independent journalism over here. 24 Site News. All right, guys, that's it for me. I will see you here live again on Substack noon tomorrow and 8 p.m. on Political Voices Network on YouTube. Thanks.